Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining into the next session on the OpenStack. In this session, today we're going to go through the OpenStack architecture. So let's go ahead and get started. If you recall from our session one, we went through some of the OpenStack, what is OpenStack, and what are the different projects. So today we're going to do a little deep dive into the architecture around the OpenStack and some of the nitty-gritty details. So if you recall from the last session, we had the different projects. So every project in OpenStack is also called a program, and every program is also a component, which is nothing but is a top level component. And for every project, there is a project technical lead who looks after that project. Every project has separate developers and design teams, has a well-defined API, with the only exception of the Horizon dashboard, which is the web GUI. And in the backend, the Horizon is also using the same RESTful API. All other projects are using the RESTful API, which is JSON or HTTP or HTTPS based. Users of OpenStack can only talk to it via these APIs. When we talk about the APIs, always keep in mind we are talking about the REST API. All the different services stores their state basically into a database. So majority of the time you would see that database being used as MySQL. All the services uses queue for orchestration. So you could use different queues that are available to us like RabbitMQ, Cupid, or ZeroMQ. Uh, don't be worried about the graphical. If you look at this picture, all of these different blocks represents a unique project that we discussed in the last session. On the top, if you see, we got the dashboard project, which is nothing but the horizon. And at the bottom, if you see, we have a identity project, which is our keystone. So we got all these different projects. And if you see, we have dashboard, database again is MySQL, or you could use database as service, which is again MySQL, object storage. We're talking about the Swift project, images is the Glance project, telemetry is used for our metering and measuring, block storage. We are referring to Cinder project here. Networking is again neutron networks. Orchestration, we are talking with the heat. And at the center, you can see the compute, which is our Nova project. If you look into this slide a little more in detail, you would see how these components or how these projects are talking to each other, what that project is doing and providing. If you look at the image project, uh, the interaction between the image project and the compute, so between Nova and the Glance, it says stores images. So basically, the Glance project is storing the images that are consumed by the Nova project. If you look at the identity says provides authentication. Uh, so it's talking to the object storage, it's talking to the Glance project, it's talking to the Nova project. So basically, the identity or the keystone is talking to every project. Dashboard, if you look at the dashboard, simply provides an UI for networks, it's talking to the network, provides the UI for your block storage center, provide UI for the compute project, provide UI for the Glance project, provides UI for your database. If you look at the network piece again, provides connectivity for, and it's talked to the Nova. So any VMs that you are spawning on the compute nodes, for the networking piece, the neutron or this network block is responsible. And at the same time, this network piece again talks to the identity to make sure it's been authenticated, somebody who is playing has all the information. Network is again talking to the telemetry project in terms of the usage. So you could measure who's using what and how much. So you can see all of these projects are in a neat and a tight manner. They are talking to each other, providing all needed details. Hopefully you got the idea how these different projects are talking and what they are doing and what they are responsible. When the OpenStack started in like 2010, the architecture was very simple. We had a dashboard. Again, it was using a RESTful API, HTTP or HTTPS. We had the EC2 or the admin API. Using that, the dashboard was talking to the Nova API. We had the Nova database, Nova network, queue, scheduler, volume. So the architecture was very small when the project got started. There was not many details or many components. But as OpenStack got popularity and over a period of time, after a couple of years, if you look, the project is pretty massive now. Don't be worried about by the graphical image. Later on during our this presentation, we will be talking about each of these components into the greater details. But if you see over a period of time, the OpenStack has grown into a pretty large project doing different things. If you look on your left hand side, we got the Swift proxy, which is nothing but our object storage. Next to that, we got the Glance API responsible for our Glance project, responsible for providing images, which are consumed by the Nova project. The biggest massive piece at the center you can see is the Nova, which is our responsible for the compute. Next to the Nova, we got the Cinder block services, and then let me have a look. Next to that, we got our networking piece, which is responsible for the network, which is consumed by again the Nova network. So not to worry, we will be doing a deep dive into every of these projects with much greater details. But hopefully by this time, you have a solid understanding that when the OpenStack started from that time to the present, it has grown into a pretty big project and it's pretty popular. Just to go over through again, there are some different components. So there are core services, there are some supporting services. So the core services like the compute, which is the project Nova, Cinder, which is our block storage, Swift, object storage, Neutron is our networking piece, database is Trove, and there are some supporting services like Keystone is responsible for identity, Glance is our image services, Horizon, Dashboard, telemetry. A lot of people still knows by the previous name of Salometer, responsible for metering and monitoring. Orchestration is our key project. We've been talking about the APIs and OpenStack uses a RESTful API or the REST API. So let's get some little overview about the REST API and some of the things about the REST API. So REST API is a method of interaction for different web services. So for that interaction, we are using HTTP or HTTPS as a protocol. REST stands for representational state transfer, basically. REST is a stateless. Always remember REST is a stateless client-server protocol with a uniform interface for accessing the object model. OpenStack REST or RESTful API is implemented using HTTP. So you are using standard HTTP get, put, post, and delete, some of those commands in combination with JSON for data. And data is transferred as an object. So whenever we are using the API, we are always getting the data in the form of an object. So hopefully by this time you will have a good understanding of what is the REST API. And keep in mind, let's go back one or two slides and look at our this conceptual architecture diagram. All of these projects, like Dashboard Horizon is talking to the compute, which is the Nova project, talking to the image project, which is our Glance. All of these projects are the components. The interaction between all of these components is handled via the RESTful API. That means if the dashboard is talking to the computer Nova, they are making use of the REST API. Similarly, if computer is talking to the image, it's making use of the RESTful API. So hopefully by this time you understand the REST API. Whenever these components needs to talk to each other, they are utilizing the REST API. Let's go a little bit into this slide. And if you look into this slide, that this is just talking about the Nova project. So looking at this Nova project, now we know that between the components or between the different projects, like when dashboard is talking to the computer, computer is talking to the glance, they are making use of the REST API. But within a particular project or component, let's take an example of Nova, we have a queue. So if you recall, the queue is for the orchestration service. So within a project, if different services or different components talk to each other, they are making use of the queue, or which is you can use RabbitMQ, ZeroMQ, or Cupid. So keep this thing always in mind that within a project or within a component, the queue, the components, or the subcomponents are making use of the queue for interaction or communication between the components. But within the major components, between different projects, the RESTful API, we are using RESTful API. So hopefully by this time you have a good understanding of some of the OpenStack architecture, some of the different projects, and the day when the OpenStack project was started. And now you can see it has grown into a pretty big, massive project. And again, thanks for joining. Hopefully, you will get a good learning out of this. And I will come up now. We will be doing a deep dive into every project. So, thank you again for watching. Thanks and have a good day. Bye bye.